so much more because she has spent years studying and living the Disney adult experience, whatever that is, we'll find out. And now she has written a fascinating new book, appropriately titled Disney Adults, that is going to dive into the heart of what I think is this often very misunderstood community and maybe even name itself. We're going to explore what draws grown-ups to Disney, how fandom shapes Disney, the stereotypes and the stigmas, and along the way, I think we may even see ourselves and maybe even our own Disney passions a little bit differently. AJ, welcome back.
Thanks, Lou. You guys, I had to beg Lou to let me come on his show. He's a very busy man, and I'm so glad that we're finally able to connect and chat, and it's so good to be here.
Well, first things first, like huge, like sincere like I'm giving a virtual hug across the screen, like huge congratulations on the book. One, because it is a huge accomplishment. I think so many people say they're going to write a book, and then there's a very small number that actually bridge that gap and do it. More importantly, Disney Adults has been incredibly well received at last count, and I'm watching the ticker basically every single day. Number 7 on the New York Times bestseller list.
It was number 4 at one point, and we're trying to get it back up there.
You just screenshot that number 4 every single day.
Yeah.
That is, it is incredible, and we're going to certainly talk more. But before we go forward, let's go back. Like, we go way back, you and I, but I want you to tell me a little bit about the AJ Disney food blog origin story, really for a little bit of context, because it's not just about how and when, but and why. I think most importantly, you started this journey, because I think that answer is going to become more important as we start to go on.
Origin story.
Hi, I'm AJ. I was born. Give me the short, condensed version, like how you started your. Well, how about you don't have to go that far back? How about just your Disney journey origin story?
Yeah, I'm not good at short and condensed. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lou. Have we met? It's fine.
Once upon a time. No, I've been a Disney fan all my life. My parents used to take us down to Florida, like Clearwater Beach and stuff like that for spring breaks. And so we would take one day to go to Disney, and it was rope drop to fireworks and then sleep in the car on the way back to the condo, kind of thing. And we'd only go every couple of years. We didn't go all the time, but that was enough for me to connect with my dad over the original 1982 Epcot Center music that we got to experience because we were both huge fans of that. Moving on, I was influenced by the ABC sitcom families going to Disney World. Like, that was a great marketing tactic for as far as I'm concerned. And so I said to my family when I got into my teens, like, hey, we should go to Disney World again. And I think we went a couple times. But then after that, when I got into college, I was like, man, I just want to escape all this. When I moved to New York City, it was dark and cold and dirty, and I wanted to leave. And so I would spend all my money going to Disney World. So that's kind of the origin story is how I've started to become a Disney adult, really. And then since then, it's all history.
So, but what is that? What is that moment, or what is that time, or what is that? Because like I know that I had it, but that moment that you start to first realize that Disney isn't just something that you enjoy, it's going to become this lifelong passion that now is going to help shape your career and, as we're going to talk about in terms of context of Disney adults, really sort of shape your identity.
I do think that happened when I was living in New York City, and I was really honestly just not super excited about my current life, and I wanted something that was cleaner and happier and more joyful, and I kind of turned to Disney in that to fulfill that desire. But I also started reading all the message boards. That was back in the early 2000s, and the message boards were so huge at that point. And it was something, it was almost a challenge for me to learn as much as I could about it. And so that sort of became my obsession, was how much can I learn about this and how good can I be at figuring out this, this vacation destination. So it was like a little challenge for me. And that just, I don't know, that just shaped me. Like I was like, I love it and I love learning about it and I love experiencing it. So it just became a hobby that I would do with all of my spare time.
And I think for you and me and probably a lot of us who are in this space, our journeys are relatively similar and at the very least somewhat parallel. We have this thing that we love. We, for one reason or other, we go from consumers to creators with no, I mean, maybe you did. I did not have any sort of grand plan. This is going to be my business. This is going to be my career going forward because you and I, we had other lives, right? I was a lawyer. You were doing many different things. And then at some point it does. That sort of flip switch gets flipped. But for the book, like, why this book? Like, and why now? Is it because did you feel like you just had this story you needed to tell? Was it to satisfy your own curiosity or fascination? Was it a little bit of introspection?
This was not something I actually wanted to attempt. I I was talking with Simon and Schuster about doing a book, and I said, "Well,
As
here's
everyone does, of course. Everybody's just
right,
sitting down with Simon.
you know." And I was like, "And here's a bunch of ideas," and they're like, "Well, what if we do this instead?" And so it was not something that I pitched because I wasn't I felt it might be, it's a huge topic. It's a controversial topic. It's something that you're going to have to dig into and help, really help people understand it. Everybody thinks they know what a Disney adult is. Everybody has an opinion, but nobody actually knows anything about us. And, we just sort of became the whipping boy online for a lot of other hobbies during COVID and when everybody was really angry online. And, Disney adults just sort of became the butt of the joke. But nobody really understood us or knew why we were the butt of the joke. They just knew we were the butt of the joke. And so I think when my editor at Simon and Schuster was like, I think someone needs to do this book right now, it made a lot of sense and it was very scary to attempt it. But I was like, all right, let's do this because I've seen both sides of this.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of Disney adults. I am a Disney adult. I'm also very analytical about this whole thing. Um, so I was ready to kind of attack it, I guess, and write the definitive guide on who we are.
So I have so many questions and so much to unpack because look, you've been covering Disney for years on Disney Food Blog, and but this book obviously is it feels much more personal and to your point, much more sort of cultural. But and I'm sort of happy that you talked about this non-definitive definition of what a Disney adult is. I'm going to be completely transparent with you, and this is probably the oldest old man thing I may or may not say today. Much to my chagrin, the very first time I really heard this used colloquially
Yeah.
was from, of course, my kids. My daughter said something about Disney adults, and I was like, yes, I'm an adult who loves Disney, which only made it worse because little did I know that there was this negative connotation to this term. I thought a Disney adult was an adult who has this deep, genuine passion for Disney, whether it's the movies or the parks or history or food or pins or merch or all the above. And it wasn't just this sort of casual fandom, but at varying degrees and width and breadth of the spectrum, it was part of their lifestyle, part of their identity. And again, I was almost, you know, because that's what our kids do, made to feel embarrassed that, like, no, dad, like Disney adult is not necessarily something that is used in the most complimentary of ways.
Right. Exactly. It was very interesting. I have seen all of um the viral TikToks and the Reddit threads about Disney adults, and the examples of Disney adults, which are some of them I think are authentic, and some of them I think are fictional. But the first key was defining Disney adults, right? And digging into the Urban Dictionary definitions, looking at, the fact that there are dating apps, people on dating apps in Anaheim and Orlando that literally put at the top of their profile, no Disney adults. Like they don't even want you involved in what they're doing. So there's a lot of negativity around it. And that's for a lot of different reasons. Chapter 4 will dig into that. Like, why are we so hated? Like, what is that about? But so defining Disney adults, I talked to a lot of psychologists about how would we define this particular term and not making it positive or negative. And so what we leaned into was a Disney adult is someone who intentionally and willingly brings Disney into their lives, whether or not they have kids, whether or not they're a millennial, all of these little stereotypical pieces. It's just if you bring Disney into your life on purpose, as an adult, then you are a Disney adult. But I do think it's a spectrum. I think that there are people who this is their whole personality. This is their whole life. This is what they base their worth on. And then there are people who, go to Disney every couple of years because they want to ride the new ride. And that's or people who just really like Disney music and want to listen to Disney music. And that's the other thing about Disney adults is I think it's such a huge community. People want to put us in a box, and you really can't. It is much more of a spectrum. There are Disney adults who don't care about the parks at all. There are merchandise Disney adults who only are going to collect the merchandise, and they're not going to care about the movies or the music or the parks or the history or Imagineering, so there's the Disney adults even have specializations. Like they go deep into one or two things, because there's just so much. Disney owns everything at this point. You can have, I consider Star Wars fans Disney adults. And it's kind of impossible to love all of it at that level.
Yeah, when I first started, which again, not to sort of date myself, was sort of pre-social media. I thought there was like just a big bucket of Disney fans. I didn't realize like the pin people don't care about the movies, and the movie people might not care about the parks. And there are these, and I think wonderfully so, all of these little sub cultures, because whoever your people are, you do have now the ability to go out and find them. When I started my discussion boards and forums in 2004, I thought I was the only semi-adult living in his basement that loved Disney as much as I did. As people came in by the hundreds and then the thousands, I was like, wow, like I do feel like I'm not the only person, because I did, but I started to sort of get a better understanding of what that looked like. But you talk about how, some people are mocked, they're ridiculed as Disney adults. You sort of use the term frame, it's the term kidults. And I start to see, because I do it myself almost unintentionally, we are defending ourselves almost against that term. I'm like, I'm not a Disney adult. They're like, whoa, Mongello, you quit your job, you sold your house, you moved to Disney, you talk about Disney for a living, you live behind the Magic Kingdom. I'm like, dude, you're a Disney adult. I'm like, no, I'm an adult who loves Disney. And I mean, yes, look, I am a 9-year-old boy trapped in a much older body, but I'm proud of that. Like, I'm proud that the place is still special to me. It still brings me joy, and I still get, a smile on my face when I see the castle, because I don't go every single day. God bless those of you who do. But it is something that brings me joy. It's brought me joy generationally, with going with my parents and then taking my kids. And I don't think that this fandom is all that much different from sports super fans or comic book collectors, of which I am as well too, or music devotees. Like, if you go to a concert or if you go to, a comic convention, you are going to see the same thing, again, on a broad spectrum. But it is about this joy and, I think, belonging and meaning to something that we all have this shared love of.
Yeah, and I really kind of dig into that a bunch in the book too, is why does everybody hate us but they don't hate NFL fans, or they, it's okay to be a Star Trek fan, but it's not okay to be a Disney fan. Um, and so what I kind of deduced there was one of the big issues, one of the big things that makes us different from a lot of other hobbyists is that the thing that we love is um supposed to be for kids, right? Like, people don't understand why you would still like something that is made for children. It's kind of like lumped into that whole, like, if you collect My Little Ponies, or if you like, you're super into, I don't know, getting those real life baby dolls, like there's like, the people are like, well, this is for kids. Why haven't you outgrown this yet? Because, and the thing is that, as Walt Disney himself said, you're dead if you aim only for kids. You have to entice the adults as well, kind of thing. So, and I think that that's what a lot of these folks don't understand, is that they may see Disney as something for kids, but Disney is actually much, much bigger than that. Um, and, I often will say, they literally just gave prime real estate in Epcot to an adults only lounge,
Mhm.
which they've never done before. And I do think that the Disney adult community is growing. It will continue to grow. You're seeing statistically, people having fewer children. So you're going to see more, and you're seeing the nostalgia from the community that grew up with Disney movies on tape, right? Disney
Mhm.
movies on their VCR, and being able to just rewind and play again. That community that grew up in the 90s, they are kind of asserting themselves as the Disney adult community. And you're going to have more and more and more and more of those coming in. People who grew up on Disney movies that could
Mhm.
watch them 24/7. Um, so I do think it's going to grow. I think that the community is going to get bigger. But yeah, that's one of the reasons people don't like us, is because they're like, they don't understand why we like something that's for children. And that's weird. Like, why do you like
Mhm.
something for kids? And so, not to defend what we do, but I do want to say, I feel like your hobby isn't, you don't love your hobby. You love how your hobby makes you feel.
Mhm.
And so, if you think about Taylor Swift fans, or NFL fans, or people who are super into knitting, like, they don't necessarily love that specific thing. They love that it makes them feel relaxed, or that Taylor Swift gets them and it's relatable, or, that the NFL makes them feel like they're part of a community of other people who love the same thing they love. That's, I think, the ticket to understanding hobbyists and people who absolutely, put all this time and money into this thing that isn't like their career.
Mhm.
um and that's kind of what you have to get your head around, is that it's the same as every other hobby. We're spending just as much money as other people are, on their hobbies, but it's people don't like it because it's for children.
Which, like you said, it's not. But I like how, you know, the book, and you, I think, obviously very deliberately, the term Disney adult may have started as a dig, right? But you and the book really are doing a lot to sort of, champion the cause of reframing it as something that's very powerful and very positive, and I think worth understanding, because I think, you know, so many people are so hard on Disney adults. I sort of thought about it in this way, and maybe that's how it's viewed. There's the Disney adults in whatever sort of bucket of fandom and that Venn diagram might look like of the overlapping of fandoms, but there's the outsiders, right? That are getting it wrong because they just don't understand who we are and what we do. And I hate to sort of talk about us like we're some sort of weird cult, but I think it's this idea of reclaiming and redefining and sort of helping us understand and other people understand what it really means to be a Disney adult.
Yeah, oh, totally. And I think what we're going to find as we continue to move as a culture online, you're going to be able to find your tribe or your people, online, much more easily than you're going to find them in your village, right? And I think we're going to continue to fracture into these little subcultures that just live online. Like there are people that I know better than I don't know any of my neighbors around here, but I know a lot of folks who live in other states and other countries because I talk to them every day online. And I think that's going to continue to be a thing. So I think that to me that's incredibly interesting to watch how we as communities are moving online, becoming not very much a part of our local neighborhoods anymore, but becoming part of our neighborhoods on the
Mm-hmm.
internet. It's fascinating to me to follow that, but I do think the Disney adults are the one thing I want people to understand is it's as big a community as NFL fans, probably even bigger. And in the same way that you might love a certain team, Lou unfortunately is a Giants fan. But you might love a certain team, but you still love the whole concept of Disney adults are the same way. I love the parks. I'm a parks adult. There are people who are movie adults, but we're all Disney adults. And so I think people are just going to have to figure out that these communities, these subcultures are very, very similar. And I mean, something else I do in the book is I liken it to, communities haven't changed over the history of time. Church communities are the same, and there's these hierarchies, and there's these rules, and these mores, and these taboos that are part of these cultures too. Which again is fascinating to look at. Disney adults know what equals status in the Disney adult community, which is fascinating, and you know what you have to get or attain in order to get that status or have people admire where you are in the Disney adult community. It's amazing. I'm a huge student of humanity, and I love like just watching all of that.
I'm the same because I love it. I almost sort of compare and liken it to. Look, as an entrepreneur, as a creator, and I think just in general, I think it's so important to put yourself in the right room, right? To be in the place where other people are. So I love attending conferences, both as a speaker and as an attendee. And I think from the Disney side, the recent Destination D23 here in Orlando, I really, as much as I was there to sort of take it in and enjoy it as a Disney enthusiast, I wanted to look at it from this lens as well because I think this was a microcosm of what the Disney community as a whole is because it is not, and you talk about this in the book, it's not a one size fits all because for some people it is about the nostalgia and the sentiment and holding on to the joys that we had in childhood. And that joy could be a goofy movie, it could be Mary Poppins, depending on where you are. But I also think it's that sense of escapism, whether, again, it's the movies or the parks as this refuge from daily life. It's that sense of belonging and that sense of community. And I also think, too, it starts to become part of your identity to allow you to be creative, to have self expression, whether you're a Disney bounder or a cosplayer or a creator, a tattoo person, or your home is just littered with Sorcerer Mickeys. It starts to become how you see yourself and how not just you present yourselves to the world, but I think taking more comfort in the fact that I can feel free to go out and express myself this way because I know now that I am not alone.
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of um I think social media has hurt a lot of stuff, but I think that social media has absolutely benefited many, many, many of us as Disney adults because we've been able to find the people we belong with that we maybe wouldn't be able to find in our physical town where we live. I think that I have talked to Disney adults who have said this community saved my life, literally saved my life
Mm-hmm.
because people um, felt so ostracized and so different from the people around them in their actual physical town, and to find a community where they belonged, where people understood them, where people gave them the space they needed to be themselves, I think is a massive benefit. And regardless of the negativity that maybe needs to be endured online or needs to be endured from your friends and family about your hobby, you can still find the people that understand you and that are passionate with you about this thing online. And I think that's a massive benefit. And I do believe that it has saved a lot of people's lives to find this particular community.
Without a doubt. And I'm sure you and I have both received an email or had a conversation with somebody who would say, because of you, because of what you do, because of this community, you have literally and figuratively saved me in, again, a very wide spectrum of ways. But,
Right.
like I've said for years, even not speaking about Disney and adults, I say sort of half jokingly, adults ruin everything, right? Look, if you're a kid who likes collecting Pokemon cards, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? If you are a kid who's trying to get your hands on a Labubu for whatever reason, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you talk about sometimes the really difficult thing about being a Disney adult is other Disney adults,
Yeah.
because there are these, you referenced it before, these are these sort of like weird hierarchies and judgment inside the community. Talk about that dynamic a little bit, right? I don't mean sort of the dark side of Disney, but in terms of maybe how we as Disney fans can support one another better.
Yeah, I mean, just the dark side of humanity in general, right? And that's something that I found studying this community is humans are humans no matter where we where we end up, and the same sort of base driving factors of, survival, success, those exist in every community, including this one. But as I was interviewing people, because one of the things I wanted to do for this book was interview a bunch of Disney adults so that people could really get an understanding of how different we all are, and the different corners of this particular subculture. And so one of my standard questions as I was doing interviews was, do you get a lot of negative response from your friends, your family, whatever? And I kept that was one of the cornerstones of my book. And one of the things I kept hearing over and over again was, yeah, a little bit, but what really stinks about being a Disney adult is other Disney adults. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Did I hear that right? And I ended up having to completely change how I was going to write the book in that particular context, because I was going to talk a lot about how much negativity people get from outside. And the truth was that they were battling more with on the inside of the community, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. Like, and but I could totally see it though, as a member of a community, you don't really care about what's going on outside. That doesn't matter to you. The people that matter to you are the other people that are in your group. It's kind of like when you're in middle school, right? Like if you're, maybe you're on the football team and you're not a band kid, you don't care what the band kids say. I'm on the football team and I care what the football kids say, right? So anyway, I dug into that a little bit, and I got a lot of interesting insights that people are like, yeah, I really hate when other Disney adults look down on me because I don't have an annual pass, or they pity me because I haven't ridden the newest ride, or whatever. I haven't done this thing that you have to. I don't have 75 lounge fly bags, whatever. Um, and the other thing they talked about was, honestly, I heard from a lot of Disney adults how much they dislike the concept of the reselling, going and buying all of the limited edition merchandise and reselling it online for higher prices. And so that really just spurred me to think about, what is it about our community that is making people feel bad or negative or ostracized in the same community, because it's getting that big. It's getting big enough that's happening. So I thought that was really interesting as well, that people felt like they had to, attain a certain, and I think Disney's noticed that, right? Disney knows that if they put a specific food item or merchandise item out there, that this community is going to esteem the people who get access to that, and that's suddenly going to give you status. And so Disney knows, okay, we're going to put this limited edition piece of merchandise over here in this part of the park that nobody goes to, so we can get bodies over there. And they know that we'll just go like sheep over there and buy that thing, so it's fascinating.
Yeah, even just, merchandise is a great example. I never realized, honestly, AJ, until recently when I would just see on social, I didn't realize that like Tuesdays for the pin community are a big deal. And if you don't believe me, look at the lines in varying locations throughout the parks or Disney Springs of people lined up, like walking at a very fast pace, borderline running to get to be first in the line to get that new pin, that limited edition release. You put the word limited or exclusive in front of something, and Disney fans' brains fall out of their head.
They do. It's absolutely, and it is because it is status. Because it doesn't. I can't. I mean, I like when I get something cool that I really wanted, but it's more about letting other people know I have this cool thing that I really wanted. Do you know what I mean? Like it's amazing to me. So again, it goes back to the anthropology of all of it, just that the study of humanity. We're not any different than we used to be. It's the same. I need to get this thing that nobody else can get. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think looking at it as you do, and I love the fact that you sort of take a micro and macro looks at this, but from a broader sort of cultural significance perspective,
Hmm.
you talk about it within sort of this greater sort of kidult trend, and I think we're starting to see. I think we've been seeing it for a while. There has been this focus on attention to, and unfortunately, being able to have this need satiated in a variety of different reasons, sentiment, nostalgia, right? And this generation especially is so strongly holding on to not just Disney, but things from their childhood. And so much so that we're spending the money, clearly, tens of $1,000s on repeated trips and cruises and pins and Lorcana cards and, lug bags. What do you think this says about, again, from a much, much broader, like, cultural perspective? What do you think this says about what people are looking for in today's world? Because I think this is very much indicative of something greater.
I we could have a whole other podcast about this. Like, I guess what my brain goes to immediately is that this is one of the first kind of, I think probably the baby boomers were the first generation that was able to look back nostalgically at their childhood and kind of want to recreate that. This might also be, and then, the millennial generation might also be one of the first generations where the world is not necessarily getting better as they get older. And so they're sort of wanting to recapture this perfection or this safety or this predictability of their childhood. And that's sort of what is driving the let me be very excited about the Lizzie McGuire reboot kind of thing. Is just like, back when I cared about that was when my life made sense.
Mhm.
And so I want my life to make sense again. So let me just go back there. And like I said, statistically, this generation is not having as many children, and I think that will continue to be a factor in, if you don't have kids and you're not sort of bringing up their childhoods, you are perfectly welcome to go back to your own childhood and spend
Mhm.
your time kind of your time and your resources around that. So I think it's partially that, the world it feels kind of messy right now, and we're looking for predictability, and we're looking for something that made us feel safe. And Disney is very, very happy to give us that.
Yeah, I think we're looking for comfort, right? We want, our own sort of version of comfort foods. And sometimes
Hmm.
buying the shirt and wearing the shirt out, it is like an NFL fan. It's not just because you love that team, you love that character, you love that movie, but you just deep down, you're waiting for somebody to walk by and go, I get you. Like I'm a
Yeah,
fan too. I get,
absolutely.
but you know, in this weekend, as I was thinking about talking to you today, look at the shelves and the walls and stuff behind me. You know, yes, it's because I do live and things like that, but these the things that I have here are for nobody else other than for me. Because as
Right.
I was looking around, I'm like, well, every so often I try and house clean a little. Let me sort of minimize a little bit what I have in here. I'm like, but this makes me feel good. Like this reminds me of something. I have my 1978 Battlestar Galactica Cylon Raider and Viper there, not because anybody is going to see it or get it, nerd, but because I see it and I think about my dad and I think about watching that show, and it's for nobody else other than me, and it just, for whatever reason, these little things make us happy.
Absolutely. I have two Aquatopia ride vehicles here that sit on my desk all the time because I have such joy and such great memories from riding this ride in Tokyo Disney. And it just makes me so happy to see these. And so if things are getting a little crazy, I just look at those and I go, ah, that was fun. It's like there is fun and joy in the world, and this is making me remember that. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of exactly why we love this stuff and collect this stuff. And then I think the point of it reminding you of your dad, like to me, as I was interviewing my staff and my and all of these Disney adults for the book, it kept going back to everybody's origin story kept going back to family or
Mm-hmm.
friends or who did I share this experience with. And that to me was very telling because it's not necessarily about the hobby. It's about how the hobby makes you feel. It's about who the hobby makes you remember and those experiences that you relive because of what you love. And so for me, it's my dad 1,000%. That comes through loud and clear in the book. But I think you get to sort of look at things and remember those people that made
Mm-hmm.
such a big difference in your life as well.
Right. It's not about the thing, right? There's a Daredevil comic book that's a graded Daredevil comic on the wall that's there. It has nothing to do with the comic book. It has nothing to do. It has to do with. I'll tell you a very quick story. I go to New York Comic Con with my son every year, and he knows I love Daredevil. And there's a cover of Daredevil who is an attorney. I am a recovering attorney who has this beautifully drawn scales of justice in Daredevil, and he knew that I wanted it. And he lied and said, "Oh, I need to go to the bathroom." And I was like, "Do you want me to go with you?" Mind you, he's like 17. I'm like, "No, it's okay, because it's New York." And he's like, "No, no." And what he did is he went off and he found this comic and he knew I wanted it and he bought it with his own money. I'm gonna cry, and he gave it to me, right? And so that's why that's it. You can't see it, but there is a 4 foot tall giant plush Baymax sitting on the little couch in my office. Yes, I love Big Hero 6. Yes, I love the thing. But again, I like my son. We were in Tokyo Disney Sea. He knew I loved it. We share the same non-threatening, huggable design. He saw me like hugging it one day while we were there. Again, I have to start picking up on what his tells are. He's like, "Dad, I need to go to the bathroom. This is right where the park closes." He runs off. He comes back. He's got this ginormous bag with the giant Baymax in it, that he bought with his own money to give for me. So he sits there not as a reminder of the character or the movie or Disney or riding the Baymax Happy Ride in Tokyo Disneyland. Oh goodness, dang it! It reminds me. It reminds me of that feeling. It reminds me of what he did for me, and that's what this is all about. It comes back to whatever sort of way it makes you feel. Like,
Yeah.
who cares what somebody else thinks?
Exactly. And I think that's the other thing that people that hate on any subculture, whether it's Taylor Swift fans or it's, football fans, whatever, like you you don't you can't judge the thing you don't really understand what's behind it, right? And I do think that that's why something that I tell people I ask people to do in the book is think about what you love. Think about the thing that you're spending lots of money on right now. Maybe it's fishing, maybe it's golf, maybe it's a boat. There are people who are like, why would you buy a friggin' boat? That doesn't make any sense. But there are people that this brings them joy. It brings them opportunities to share with friends and family. It brings them peace and comfort. And that's what you have to think about is what do you love that you're spending all your time and money on? And then just understand that's how Disney adults feel, right? That everybody's got something that they love that they're passionate about, probably obsessive about, and that's just how we as humans, I guess this thing that makes us feel good, the thing that gives us dopamine, that gives us, joy and happiness, and reminds us of our grandma, or reminds us of our son, or, of our spouse. That is the thing that we're going to love, and everybody's got something like that. You just have to figure out that you understand other people from that perspective. Like I always say, if you don't get somebody, if you don't like somebody, figure out what you have in common with that person, and then you might understand them a little bit better. So find that thing that you love, and then you might understand Disney adults maybe just a little bit more.
Well, I think to your point, AJ, I think there is something that everyone can learn from this, right? Because I think that there's a bit of a paradox at play, right? Disney adults are accused of refuse, like grow up, man, like really. But in truth, I think maintaining this, Duncan Ward talks about this all the time, is that as we become adults, creativity starts to sort of fall away.
Mm.
But I think maintaining that wonder in adulthood might be one of the hardest and most mature things that you can do. So do you think that Disney adults are actually modeling a much healthier form of adulthood because we embrace this idea of not necessarily growing up?
Well, something that I do talk about in the book is that I people accuse us of being head in the sand. People accuse us of not dealing with things, and it's just escaping to Disney, and wrapping ourselves in this fantasy world. But what I will say to that is that I actually think, and there's a story in the book about, my very best friend in my late 20s, my roommate, was diagnosed with breast cancer at, 27, which is insane. You're not thinking about stuff like that then. And we had a super budget trip to Disney scheduled, and we ended up going to Disney, and Disney is where we processed this, and what does this mean, and what should she do, and what are next steps. I actually think that going to a place that gives you peace and comfort and joy is a place that is going to help you actually work through reality in a much more positive way. And I talked to several Disney adults who had similar experiences. Oh, I found out my dad passed away, and this is where I went to kind of process it, because everything around me felt safe. And so I was able to I had more energy to process this thing I needed to think about. So anyway, I think that's another interesting way to look at it, is people see us as, oh, we're just escaping reality, and trying to run away from it. But in truth, Disney is actually a great place for us to go to feel safe and surrounded by joy and love, and a place where we can actually process reality in a much more positive way.
So I want to try and connect the dots a little bit between where we are now, the future, and the past a little bit, right? Because what about the future, right? Do you think that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to continue to embrace this Disney fandom in adulthood the same way that millennials and Gen Xers has? Like, what does the future of Disney adults look like?
I do think that this community is going to grow substantially. I think that the generations coming up are not going to necessarily see a significant division between things that are for kids and things that are for adults. I don't know why I think that, but I do think that these generations have grown up on Disney, have grown up on Disney keeps buying more and more and more and more and more, and so everything they're surrounded by is owned by Disney, and they're going into Fortnite, and they're going into all these spaces where these kids live. And so I do think that they're going to be Disney fans, and I don't think there's going to be quite as much of a stigma, I don't think, I think people are going to start to understand more that you can love what you love and that's okay.
Mhm.
So I'm very intrigued to see what happens and how Disney changes. That's something else I wanted to look at in this book is does this fandom actually affect Disney's choices? And I do think it does. And so I think it's going to be fascinating to see how this younger generation affects what we end up experiencing in the parks and the movies and things like that. It's going to be cool to watch. I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, and if you don't believe that the line between adults and kids has been blurred, just look at the Bluey fans because there's more adult, like. But I'm happy you brought up Disney because that's what I mean about sort of connecting the dots in terms of Disney's role and
Yeah.
strategy. And it's because Disney has, since the very beginning, they've catered to adults, like from fine jewelry and watches in the 30s to
Yeah.
retirement communities, like, a very adult driven communities and experiences and tours and trips. Like, how intentional do you think is in terms of looking at Disney in terms of helping to cultivate this idea of Disney as adult as lifelong fans?
Oh, very intentional. And I think it always has been. I I just think now it's becoming extremely obvious, right? And some of the folks that we interviewed, um, one quote that I thought was, well, we actually asked people how long do you think you'll be a Disney fan? And it was like, I'll be a Disney fan till I die.
Mhm.
And I think that Disney is like, great, let's figure out how to make money from you until then let's do that. And they absolutely are. I mean, look at
Which we
Golden
very
Oak.
willingly do. We line up and take days off to give Disney our money because, again, we know what the return on the investment is going to be for us.
We do. We absolutely do. Like Disney it fascinates me again. I say fascinating a lot because this community really is that Disney is I will sit in an online waiting room for 11 hours on multiple devices in order to give Disney thousands of dollars. It's like, let me destroy my whole day just to sit and watch this little man walk across a little
I hate the
thing.
little green man.
I hate the little man.
Can I pay you more to give you more? Is really what I'm trying to.
And then the thing that boggles my mind is that it'll kick me off the
Yeah.
waiting room and I'll get back on. I get back on the waiting room. Like, what is wrong with me? But it's true. I think Disney will absolutely continue to realize that that they have a lot of adults who are dedicated to what they do. I mean, you look at Disney Vacation Club, Golden Oak. If you really start digging to see all the ways that Disney is very happy to take the money of grown-ups without children or grown-ups that are Disney adults, you see it more and more and more. So,
Mhm.
yep, I think that'll become a much broader. There'll be many more opportunities for us to give Disney money as we get older.
Yeah. And look, this, from a marketing perspective, it always used to be, get the children interested in something and then the adults will come and spend the money.
Yeah.
Breakfast cereals, Disney parks, whatever it might be. But now I think Disney is in an interesting place because they've got to start to very intentionally think about balancing the children
Right.
and adult superfans, right? So, because there are. So, do you think all of these adult-oriented offerings, upscale dining, GU82, after-hours events, do you think? How do you think that plays in terms of enhancing the experience for adults, or are you starting to, risk, because now you're doing things that are not going to be, for actual kids, not just Disney adult kids as well.
Um, I mean, I think Disney does see the writing on the wall that they have a huge community of adults that don't have children that are very happy to continue along with their Disney fandom. And so they are going to have to, and those people aren't necessarily, they may be looking for nostalgia, but they're not necessarily excited to just ride Peter Pan over and over and over again. They want other things. And so I think Disney is recognizing, okay, we've got to create, these other spaces and opportunities. I mean, Villains Land is very interesting to me. I don't know
Mhm.
that that would have ever been a thing that would have happened in original Disneyland. Because I think that is going to be not obviously not adults only, but maybe a little more adult oriented or older child, older kid oriented. And I think that, the fact that Disney keeps building these deluxe resorts, right? I mean, we haven't seen a value or a moderate built in years. It's all higher end. It's all, come and spend your money on this luxury experience. So I think that that's interesting too, that they're clearly catering to people that have excess dollars to spend, and they want this to be a luxury and an adult oriented experience. I think it's going to be real cool to see how these offerings
Mm-hmm.
really change. And I don't believe this yet, but I feel like instead of we've got to get the kids so that the adults will come, Disney is absolutely shifting at least to 50-50 of enticing the adults,
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost.
Yeah, you're gonna go to Disney World whether you like it or not, kids. Right?
Pretty much. I mean, and that's what's so funny is I had a book signing this past week, and there was a family there, and it's all the adults that are coming, obviously. It's the kids aren't coming to see me or get a book signed. And it's the adults that are dragging their kids along, and I'm like, do you like going to Disney with mom? It's all right. You know what I mean? They're like, well, I guess I have to go because this is what we're doing for spring break. So I do think that it may be shifting to that a little bit.
You also talk about, and I think this is fascinating, especially from where we come from, about how, we're talking about the relationship of Disney and fans. And you talk about how fans have become, and I don't love this word contextually because I think it's a gift word, not one you call yourself, but I digress, about how fans have become not only influencers, but really almost unofficial ambassadors for Disney.
Yeah.
How do you look at that relationship between Disney and fan creators today in the context of Disney adults?
Yeah, this was a very interesting part of the book that I wanted to include because I think this is a very opaque relationship, and a lot of people want to understand how it works. And so I tried to dig into this in the book a little bit to show at least how I understand that it works, because I think it is evolving. I think the influencer subculture, or the influencer culture, I should say, it's not a subculture, is growing. I think there's a lot. I think at this point, a lot, I wouldn't say the majority of, but probably 50% of Disney fans are influencers as well. That's a part of what they're doing is showing what they're doing online, right? And so watching Disney grow from literally suing people who talked about them online to um this being a huge part of their marketing, this kind of user generated content being a huge part of their marketing strategy, is very interesting to look at. And we've been with Disney, we've been around Disney to watch that whole evolution from, okay, Disney's going to actually start a parks blog and start the moms panel, and they want to actually interact with fans
Mm-hmm.
in a way that they never had before. And then moving on to, okay, well, what do we do with all these people who are talking about us online? How do we control that messaging? And figuring out, okay, how we're actually going to bring these social media people to our media events that historically had only been mainstream media, like magazines and newspapers and radio. And so now we're going to bring these people who are creators and influencers, and just watching them evolve through that has been interesting. And watching us evolve through that has
Mm-hmm.
been interesting. I mean, we've all been on this ride together and figuring out how's this going to work. And I think it is still very, very much evolving. As you're seeing the influencer culture everywhere evolving. It's not. I say in the book, it's not anymore like you watch the Pepsi commercial where Cindy Crawford drinks from the Pepsi can, and obviously she really likes Pepsi. Like, we all know she got paid. She probably doesn't even drink Pepsi, but in terms of now you're watching these influencers and creators and you're not really sure who to trust anymore. Like,
Mhm.
are they just saying this because they want to go back to Disney for free, or are they really trying to help me? Um, and so now we as consumers have to figure out where are the lies and where are the truths here. Again, that's another thing that is very interesting to keep an eye on, is how is Disney going to continue to evolve with the influencer culture? Because it's got to be really hard
Mhm.
for them to decide, yes, this is someone that it makes sense for us to spend our time and money on, because of course they want them to say nice things about them, but they can't require that. And so you've got to pick and choose carefully. And then of course the influencer themselves is kind of thinking, well, I'm never going to get invited back to Disney if I'm not nice about them. And so, if I don't like the food, or if I don't like the hotel, or if I don't like this experience, am I okay to say that?
Mhm.
And so we're all just sort of figuring out what that's, there's no regulations. It's still the Wild
Mhm.
West.
Well, I think it comes again. This is a whole other conversation we could have another day, but it really comes to the trust. The trust. I talk about. I think that we're all in the relationship business, AJ. No matter what business that you
Yep.
are in, and I have a relationship with you, but I have a relationship with you, the one person who is listening, and that relationship is built on trust, and that
Yes.
trust is very much a two-way street. And I think that is what Disney is looking to invest in the creators, the influencers, whatever you want to call them,
Yep.
but almost as an extension of that. I do a lot of speaking to corporations about how they could sort of leverage lessons from Disney and the Disney parks and the relationships that Disney parks has with their biggest super fans and Disney adults. And I think that there is no other company, no other brand on planet Earth that has the amount of brand loyalty that
Nope.
Disney does, right? So if Disney adults are the most loyal customers that any brand can dream of, what kind of lessons do you think other industries, other businesses could learn from Disney about how to cultivate that same type of not fleeting, but more importantly, that lifelong devotion that we have?
This is the million-dollar question. And this is something I wanted to figure out. This is like my whole chapter two. It's like, how do you manipulate me like this, Disney? How do you make me like this, that I will sit in that online waiting room for 11 hours
No,
just to
they
give
make
you
us love
thousands of
it,
dollars?
right? Not just like it, they make us love it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the barometer. Like once you pass that line from like to love, that's when everything changes.
And that's what I think that, so that's, I think, honestly, the message to other companies who are trying to create a loyal fandom like this is to make sure that your fans create their own subculture around
Mhm.
it, right? That they belong to, that they feel defines them. Um, so I'm a big romance novel reader. I know you're surprised.
Who
Um,
is, I mean, really, who isn't?
who isn't? But there's this romance writer who has asked, she writes about a little small town, right? And everybody knows that little small town that she writes about. All of her readers know that little small town. And
It's
so
a quiet
she,
village. Every day is like the sorry. See, I'm a Disney
yes.
adult. I just did it.
Oh, Lou. And so what she created, she reached out to her readers and said, "Hey, we're going to create a cheerleading squad for this town. And you can be a member of the cheerleading squad." And basically, what you have to do for the cheerleading squad is tell other people about the little town. And then you get status as being part of the cheerleading squad in this fandom. And you are absolutely proselytizing to all of your friends about this particular writer's work. And I think that is probably one of the keys, is create make sure that your fans create a living and breathing community of their own, that they are trying to get status in, and that they've created a hierarchy in, and that they feel safe within. And then you're home free, right? Like there you go. And I mean, I don't know that there's a Costco adult, like, I don't know that that exists, but Disney has absolutely allowed this community to grow, and it has a life of its own, which I think is problematic for Disney sometimes. But I think that's where the loyalty stems from, is that it's not necessarily about Disney, it's about the community we're a part of because of it.
Yeah, and that's the important word. And I say this all the time, AJ, that, unfortunately, sometimes communities become a marketing buzzword, and it shouldn't be. But from a Disney perspective, you know, going way back, there was the Mickey Mouse Club, right? There was a sort of club you can join, and then it sort of faded away. It
Yeah.
just sort of just came out of. But then what happened was we, as creators in the late '90s, very early 2000s, started to create our communities of our own,
Yep.
and there were all these sort of micro communities popping up. And I think Disney looked at that and says there is a desire for this as well. And just again, I remember. Do you remember the whole like what is 23?
Yes.
Like teasing, and then Disney's like they're launching their community. I'm like that's brilliant. And now
Yes.
they've embraced it. And look at D23 Expo. Look at Destination D. Look at the fan events. They're bringing people together under their own umbrella, while still not excluding those of us who have created our own sort of micro communities on our own.
Right. I think they finally I think back in the day they didn't realize that that was actually beneficial to them. And now they have, and so they're willing to let us exist and continue to basically freely advertise for them, I'm grateful for. But yeah, no, I think that's probably the MO. If I'm building, if I'm building a company, is to make sure that my fans, the people that want the product that I'm creating, also care about each other and continue to, I guess, want to spend time together. Because that's just, you just, again, it's all about psychology. It's all about humanity and what we're all looking for, which is to be a part of a safe space and a community of other people who are like us. So yeah, I think that's probably key.
And I think you're right. I think community and trust and understanding and belonging acceptance are so very important, and that trust has to be given before it can be received. And I think
Yes.
you do
Yes.
that. Yeah, you do that in the book because, and I want to sort of bring it back a little bit to you because I very much appreciated that you shared your own perspectives and your own lived experiences. Right? You talked about how Disney was this, and you were very transparent. And I appreciate that because how it was this sort of emotional refuge and escape for you and a coping mechanism sometimes, which I think it is for a lot, especially those of us who live here. Like, I just need to go. I just need a little like infusion of Disney. I just need to go there. And you also talked about, you talked about like going into credit card debt, right? Because of Disney,
Yep.
because there is almost sort of like this, you know, I've never taken drugs, but I imagine it's almost like this drug-like
Yeah.
feeling, and having to balance this obsession and passion a little bit, so it does not become overwhelming like that.
Yeah, if you like, we all want to do things to make us feel good. And if we don't feel good in our regular lives, then we're going to look for something out there that does make us feel good, and we're going to keep doing that. And so that particular time in my life, when I would, I freely admit I was addicted to and obsessed with Disney, is because everything else going on in my life wasn't really what I wanted it to be. And so I was constantly just trying to get to the thing that made me happy and joyful. Um, and ended up having to, get myself out of the situations that I was in so that I could, find a lifestyle that made me happier day to day. And I talked to some great therapists in the book about how do you know if you're addicted? How do you know if this is not something that is healthy and safe for you in terms of the amount of money you're spending or how you're affecting your family with your Disney obsession? You know what I mean? And again, it's a spectrum. There's no easy way to just look at a pinpoint a specific thing that says, okay, now you're addicted or you're obsessed. No, it's not. It's, are you neglecting other things in your life because of whatever it is you're loving or obsessed with or addicted to? Or are you spending money on this that you should be spending on something else? So it's different for everybody. Some people are it's perfectly fine for them to go to Disney 20 times a year, and they're perfectly safe and healthy, and they're not neglecting anything else in their life, and it's good. For some people, going once a year is too much, in terms of them, being able to handle everything else that's going on in their lives. So again, it's a spectrum. And, again, what I say in the book is like, dude, there's no guilt here. There's no negativity. We have all done things that we are addicted to or obsessed with. Like, believe me, if anybody tries to put you down because of that, you just tell them that they need to re-examine their life, because we've all done it. And so it's just understanding, okay, what point is too far for me, and how do I pull back from it?
Yeah, and I love that you share the not just the people, but the process and perspective of putting together a book like this, because this is not just AJ's feeling about what a Disney adult is. You've talked to Disney adults, you've talked to people on your staff, you've talked to psychiatrists, you've talked to people, so you really do get such a wide variety of personal and professional inputs into putting this together, so that you can try and answer all these questions.
Yeah. What do I know? I don't know anything. I'm just trying to figure it out
We're
too.
just figuring it out, right? We're all just the secret is we're all trying to figure it out.
All just trying to figure it out. And that's and what you said about, and you and I have talked about this many, many times in the past too, is that your community, the people that follow you, Lou, and who trust you and know that you are looking out for their best interests, like that's the most important thing that we have built, is that we have a community that believes we are not trying to swindle them or anything like that. We are just trying to like be honest with them and truthful, and gain their trust and help them in the same way that they help us. And so I think that that's really what I was trying to do in this book, is like bring everybody along with me as we try to figure this out. Like, why does Disney have this control over us in a way? Why do we love it so much? And the bottom line is, it's not, it's not magic. It makes perfect sense from a psychological perspective, and in truth, we're very similar to a lot of other fandoms. And I think that I think that people are going to continue to, again, fracture into these fandom subcultures. These are going to be your communities, in a way that your village used to be your community. So I think it's just going to be, it's going to be interesting to watch. And I know I blah, blah all the time, but to me, it's just it's so cool to have been able to dig deep into it and talk to so many people in the community and know so much more about it now. And I just wanted to bring everybody along with me on that.
I have to imagine that as you're doing clearly extensive research and writing, that there were some like wow and aha moments. Was there something that sticks out to you as either the most surprising that you discovered, or maybe a story or a person that really maybe stuck with you as epitomizing the subculture?
Nothing epitomizes the subculture, because it is, I think that's where people get Disney adults wrong, right? Is that they think that the person falling to their knees and crying in front of the castle is the subculture. And it's like, no, that's part of the subculture. That girl exists. She's out there. But there are so many more representations of Disney adulthood across the board, and that's what I think was the most important thing to show, is that there's a part of the book where I'm like, yeah, the guy doing your colonoscopy might have a Mickey balloon tattoo. You don't know. And we're everywhere. We were literally everywhere. And the
fact that you chose colonoscopy is both funny and frightening all at the same time.
Listen, man, we're of a certain age, Lou, you and me. So I mean,
go get your screening. If you're listening, go get your screening.
Go get your screening. They give you really good drugs. You'll sleep through the whole thing. But I do. One of the things that really surprised me was the whole, I don't care about what anybody else says about me, but I do care about what Disney adults say about me. That to me was jarring. Because, and Lou, you and I have been doing this for a long time. We are the original Disney adults. I mean, you are the original Disney adult, because I remember sitting in my bathroom reading your Disney World trivia book.
Listen, I know my place in the circle of life.
Listen, that's where that's where you lived for me. But listen, I will tell you, whoever gets into my bathroom, that's a good book that I want to read. But I will say that, we don't necessarily always see it from that perspective, because, we've had a lot of the experiences that other people will, our bucket list experiences for them. And so we don't necessarily see that negativity from other Disney adults, because we haven't done something, or we don't have the status, and so hearing that, and just knowing that the negativity from external forces mattered nothing to these people. It was just, I don't like that other Disney adults are judging me in this way. That was really surprising to me, and I'm like, well, that's a huge bummer, but I get it. Again, that's, like I said, that's junior high. That's, your church community. That's any community you're a part of that matters to you. It's going to matter how they think of you. And so that made perfect sense. So I shifted how I was researching based on that.
Yeah. I have like hundreds of questions just dancing around in my head, but I also want to be respectful of your time, because I think this is such a fascinating topic that the more we all talk about it together, the more understanding we have, not just about who other people are, but I think who we are. Mm-hmm. But again, I appreciate how much of AJ is in his book, not just sort of this, sociological look at Disney adults. But if you took away Disney completely from your life, the parks, the films, the memories, like, who would AJ be? And what I mean by that is, what do you think that Disney fandom has given you that you either were looking for or you couldn't find somewhere else?
Oh, everything. It's given me everything. It's giving me purpose. It's given me a reason to get up in the morning, the fact that I can go and turn my mistakes that I make in the parks into something that's going to help other people, save them money, save them time, make them have a fabulous trip when they would have had a disastrous trip. To me, being able to actually help and affect other people's, joyful times is everything to me, and has been for, like I said, back in the early 2000s, when I would just read those message boards. I just wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn more because I wanted to help people. I actually got banned from a message board because I was answering too many questions with linking to other sites, and I wasn't allowed to link to other sites apparently. And so, I got banned from a message board because I would just go through and try to help, answer these questions.
It's why I started my forum, because the same thing was happening to me. And I'm like, I want people to share good things from good people.
Right.
With good people. Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't we do that? And so it was, to me, it's everything. And I think that if I wasn't doing this, I would probably be, just studying medieval church history. I don't know, like, but it certainly wouldn't be this fun, and it wouldn't be this joyful. And the bottom line for me, again, like I said, I was at a book signing this weekend, and everybody was like, "Oh wow, you must be so tired from talking to all these people." And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, this is why I do this, because I want to hear your stories and talk to you about, which steak is the best steak at Le Cellier. And like, that to me is just absolute joy. And so it's brought me so much, and continues to bring me so much happiness and joy. So I'm so glad that I ran my credit cards up to $17,000 and, and was addicted to Disney, because it's ended in this, which has been just an absolute pleasure.
Is there an AJ before and after, right? Because look, you've been a fan, right? A super fan. You've been an authority documenting the fandom and sharing it and bringing so much joy to people with things like Disney Food Blog. But has writing Disney adults changed the way you personally engage with Disney or Disney fans? Like, do you still feel the same magic? Do you see it differently now? Like, what does before and after AJ look like?
Um, I think I just understand things a lot more than I did, and I've learned so much. I've learned so much about Disney adults, about the culture, and something that, when I was a kid, what I wanted to, my parents brought me to Gettysburg for a spring break trip. And what fascinated me about Gettysburg was all the stories that hadn't been told. All of the people that lived through that battle and were in their houses around Gettysburg. Like I wanted to tell those stories. And so what this book has allowed me to do is really give a little bit more insight into the Disney adult subculture by telling stories about the people that are a part of it. So I've learned so much about everybody in here. I've learned a lot about how Imagineers look at this subculture and how they see this subculture, which I think was very interesting. And the evolution of it as well, because I don't think we're done evolving. I think we are just starting. And so I'm excited to see what happens next with this particular group of super fans and friends. And so many people have supported one another in this subculture as well. So I do think this is just growing to be a very mature and passionate community that cares about each other as much as they care about Disney. So before and after AJ is just I've learned so much, and I have so much more of a love for the community than I even did before, which sounds like a cop out, but it's true.
No, and that's that's the answer I was hoping for, right? Because sometimes when something becomes work, you look at it differently because now like this is my job, and you've never been like that. And look, there are, and in a good way, there are, just like Disney fandom, there are countless books about Disney and Disney and Disney parks and movies, but there's nothing like this, right? There is no sort of examination of the fandom the same way, and the response to the book is very, very well deserved. And so to sort of bring the two AJ worlds together to celebrate your book release, Disney Springs, I loved seeing this. A number of restaurants in Disney Springs featured special Disney adult-themed drinks and treats. So if you had to pick one Disney park snack or meal or drink that best captures this spirit of being a Disney adult, what would it be and why?
The spirit of being a Disney adult. I wish you'd told me you were going to ask me this question.
I didn't think about it until right now.
Okay, good. I would choose a Dole Whip, and here's why.
Plant that flag. Go ahead.
I think that Dole Whip has evolved to be so many different things. You can have the float, you can have different flavors, you can get it in so many different places. It used to be just you'd get a Dole Whip float at Aloha Isle the end, back when Aloha Isle was Sunshine Tree Terrace. And that was, and that was it. And now it just, that whole thing has grown so much, and Dole Whip, everybody knows what a Dole Whip is, and they know where you can get them, and you can get them in places without a park ticket, or you can, whatever. So it's sort of become indicative of Disney. And that's sort of how the Disney adult community has grown as well. Like, I think that back in the day, there was probably just a certain kind of Disney adult, and now we're just, the community has grown so much. We're all different, and there's lots of different flavors of Disney adults.
There is, and you know what? There's no one flavor that's better than
That's right.
Disney has, I just talked about this on another interview. Like, I keep thinking as somebody who admittedly was not the most popular kid in grammar school, high school, college, law school, whatever, it doesn't matter. Disney was always this sort of place that everyone is welcome. Everybody belongs. Everybody has a place with no judgment, with no nothing. And I keep thinking about the song, like, God help the outcast, but he has, and he's brought us all together in this place where no matter where your fandom lies, no matter what your Disney fandom looks or feels like to you personally, inwardly, outwardly, like, there is a place for you here. And I think that is the beauty of Disney. It is why I love this so much. And I love this place so much. And I love this book. It's Disney Adults Exploring and Falling in Love with a Magical Subculture. AJ Wolfe, tell people where they can get the book and anything else that you want to share about if you have any upcoming book signings, appearances, or if they could just come to your house and get it signed there.
Yeah, you definitely can. You can get the book anywhere you buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, all those places. If you want a signed copy, you can go to my website, dfbstore.com, and order a signed copy. I've got like hundreds of books piled up on my dining room table that I go through and I sign. So you can get that. It's a great gift. If you're not a Disney adult, you can get it for your Disney adult friend. And I got a book signing in Jonesboro, Arkansas on Saturday, but I don't know if this will go out by then. But looking into other book signings, because I do think that those just fill my heart with so much joy to meet the people that are reading the book and liking it. And helps me with my imposter syndrome. So I want to do a lot more book signings if I can. So stay tuned to our Instagram and website for that information. But yep, that's what we got.
Walt talked about you can design and build the most magical place on earth, but it takes people to make a dream a reality. I think that's very applicable to cast members. I also think it's applicable to you and me and every other Disney fan and Disney adult out there. We don't just go for the place, but we go for the people. AJ, I am so happy for and proud of you and grateful to you and for you for not just what you've been doing for so many years. What, 2009 you started?
2009 I started, yes.
But what you do with the book, it is a fascinating read. Absolutely pick it up. And hopefully, if this wasn't too painful for you, you will come back and we will. There's so much more I still want to talk to you about, not just about Disney adults, but certainly about Disney food.
I will come and talk to you every day.
You are awesome, but you knew that already.
Thanks, Lou. So are you.